Hey everyone, it's Hannah again with another video on a new assessment process we're going to be trying out this year, and this is feedback rubrics for qualitative feedback on Turnitin. So a rubric is an assessment tool used for evaluating student work, and it can be used for grading and providing feedback, and we're specifically going to just be using it for providing feedback this year. It's usually a grid or a table and consists of a set of criteria against a rating scale which you can map student work to. So this is what a rubric looks like generally. It will be a table with evaluative criteria down one axis and the level down another axis, and then a definition of what the work or performance looks like at each level. So the benefits of rubrics are many, and they really align with our three key feedback objectives for this year. We want to continue to improve the consistency and clarity of feedback for students. We want to improve student engagement with feedback, so something they actually look at and value and use. We want to deliver feedback to students on time. And we really struggled this last year, and we were late with a lot of our feedback return times. So I'm hoping that this is going to be really helpful for you guys as markers as well, to speed that up without adding too much extra pressure. And rubrics have been shown to help in all three of these areas. In a study conducted by the HEA, exploring effectiveness of rubrics, students found them very helpful in clarifying performance and promoting self-assessment, whilst tutors felt that it was a very time-efficient and informative method of providing feedback. They're also really useful for large cohorts. If you've got 50, 100 papers to mark, they can really speed things up and help you to really differentiate between the work. And they're also really useful for inexperienced assessors to get used to those assessment criteria. Now, they're not perfect, which is one of the reasons why I haven't used them before. If they're used alone, they're very descriptive. Students will really need to be skilled in interpreting those descriptions and converting that into feedback they can really use and act upon. And they're also very generic. Students generally appreciate individualised feedback that demonstrates their examiners fully engage with the work and really cares about it. And they can also lead to grade inflation. So if you're using a quantitative rubric, which is one that assigns a certain number of points, depending on where the work lands, often you find that grades increase. And they can also sometimes penalise creative approaches to work, and marking risks becoming a mathematical exercise. Sometimes it's okay to overlook some technical issues when other aspects of the work are really exceptional. And finally, a one-size-fits-all rubric will be more effective with some types of assignments over others. So we're going to trial it for a few specific assignments, and we have created a rubric from our existing generic criteria, one for each level, and then split that into 6 dimensions or categories, which I'll show you in a minute. We really want to just get some feedback on this style of delivering feedback to students. So we want some feedback from you as markers, and we want to find out what the students think as well. Now, the rubric we've made is built from our generic criteria, which generally applies better to academic type work and is less transferable to practical and creative assessment. So that's what we're going to use it for the time being. In the future, if students really enjoy this kind of feedback, we would like to involve them in creating some rubrics for more creative and practical assessments, because it's been shown that if students are actually involved in the creation of this, they tend to engage more with the assessment and do better. But for now, this rubric for academic work will be consistent across modules where we use it and should help them see clearly where they need to improve and how to transfer those areas for development across modules. And it should really help the parity of marking across modules too. So this is what it looks like in its whole form. So this is built very much from the generic criteria. You can see the levels down the left there. And then I've split it into 6 categories: relevance, knowledge and skill, argument and structure, analysis and critical evaluation, presentation, research and referencing. What I haven't done is allocate any kind of points to those different categories, because depending on the kind of assignment, you can interpret how important each of these are. And what we also haven't done is break down the higher and lower categories into very specific descriptions, because generally, if a piece of work is hitting all those things in the 2-1 category, it's probably actually going to be a first, and it just depends on your own kind of review of the work in terms of where it really sits in the higher categories. And similarly with a fail, if work is really not meeting any of the requirements down here, then it's going to be a fail, and it's just to what degree that work will fail. So in terms of transferring this to Turnitin, we have used the 2-1, 2-2, third and high fail category here, and converted those into kind of more value judgments, so excellent, good, adequate and poor, which you can rate the students against. So it looks a bit like this. So when you go on Turnitin, and I'll show you, you can actually select where the student's work fits within each of these categories. So yeah, it's just to enhance feedback for students. It will speed up marking time and can be used in conjunction with the generic criteria here to determine the grade. And it includes learning outcomes down the bottom here. A student achieving excellently will have achieved all learning outcomes to a very high standard. A student achieving in the poor category will have not met one or more of the learning outcomes. We've added this because it's really important that you do acknowledge the achievement of learning outcomes, as achieving those is essential to getting a pass mark. What about feed forward, I hear you ask? Well, we're not going to be using it alone. We've made such amazing progress in producing developmental, action-focused feedback that is really appreciated by students and by external examiners, and we are not suggesting you stop providing this. So the rubric is not designed to replace all commentary in student work, but it is hoped that it will speed up the generic comments you find yourself making. So it should remove a lot of the descriptive feedback that you provide. So when you justify why a piece of work has the mark it's been awarded, you'll often find an assessment you'll be writing the same things over and over again about referencing or research or how the work's presented, and this should cut a lot of that out. But you should use it in conjunction with either the 3-minute audio feedback function on Turnitin or the commentary box, the text box. We recommend that you write around 150 to 300 words for most assignments. We don't want you to be writing loads and loads and loads. This isn't an addition, it's to replace some of the written feedback that you would write normally. Generally, concise, action-focused feedback used in conjunction with a rubric will be really clear and easy to digest for students. And if a student has performed well in all but one or two areas, you can offer some clarity on what exactly let them down, how to improve. You can link to in-text comments here for extra detail as well. And you can really focus and hone in on the things the student needs to do to get a better mark next time. Here's also the place to provide a bit more detail on how well they've achieved those learning outcomes. For this to be most effective, you want students to start engaging with the rubric before the assessment. Show it to them, both the full version and what they'll see on Turnitin, and encourage them to self-assess or peer assess prior to submitting. You can also use it as a tool to evaluate past papers and ask students to play around with it, so maybe take some of the descriptions out and ask them to fill in the blanks, paraphrase and create their own versions. It's also really important to return to it after the assessment. Encourage students to use their rubrics and developmental feedback to create action plans. If we do end up using them across multiple assessments, you can ask students to synthesise their feedback, evaluate whether there are common themes that are arising, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and how they can use those to their best advantage. Discuss the rubrics in class, so which areas did comments struggle with the most, what are the common themes, and put a lesson or two aside to explore this and target areas for development. Tell students before the assessment this is something that you're going to do. And also get some feedback, so ask them if they find them helpful. We want students to feel that feedback is a two-way process, something they can contribute to, something that's designed to help them. So if there's something we can do to improve it, we want to know about it. So the next thing to do is to check out the how to use rubrics video on Turnitin, which is just a practical, really quick walkthrough of how the system actually works in practice. Before you go, just a quick recap. We'll be trialling rubrics on a few select assignments and seeking feedback from markers and students. If you're not sure if your assignment is one that applies, please do check with the exams team. Rubrics are built from existing BIM generic grading criteria, and they must be used in conjunction with some further developmental commentary in written or audio form. It must be completed on Turnitin. You'll see that there is a different system for live assessments, and you can find another video on that. And for this to be most effective, you should use rubrics throughout the whole assessment preparation process, explaining them and exploring them in class beforehand and after the assessment. Thanks.